my name is Dion and I'll be your instructor in this Python course. In this course, we are going to learn everything you need to get started programming in Python. Every day, people use Python for a variety of different tasks like data analysis, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and automation. If you are a beginner, don't worry. I'll help you throughout this course. And Python is super easy to learn. So I've done my best to create the best possible Python course for beginners. And I'll appreciate it if you support my hard work by liking this video and sharing it with others so they can learn as well. And be sure to subscribe to my channel for more tutorials like this. Now let's jump in and get started. In this tutorial, I will show you how to download and install Python on your computer. The first thing I want you to do is to open up your browser and head over to python.org. On this page, click on Downloads. Here, you can see the latest version of Python. Currently, at the time of recording this video, the latest version is Python 3.8.5. Chances are in the future, when you're watching this tutorial, there is a newer version of Python available. Don't worry, all the materials we learn in this course will apply to the latest version of Python as well. So let's go ahead and download Python. Now look at your downloads folder. Here we should see Python 3 installer. Double click on that. If you are on Windows, you should see this little checkbox here. Add Python 3.8 to path. This is important, so make sure you check this box, else you will not be able to follow this tutorial. If you are on Mac, just click continue and install. Alright, next we need to install a code editor. We use a code editor to write our code, just like how we use Microsoft Word to write our documents. Now, there are so many code editors out there. The one that I am going to show you in this tutorial is the VS Code. It is one of the most popular editors for writing code. You can get it from code.visualstudio.com/download. So let's go ahead and download VS Code. Now once again, look at your downloads folder. Here you should have a VS Code download wizard. Just double click on it and install VS Code. This is what you should see when you open it. So let's go ahead and create a new folder. Let's name this folder Python. Now let's open this folder in our code editor. Now go here and click on this icon. This will create a new file for you. Call this file app.py. So by convention, all Python files must have this py extension. Now let's collapse this panel by clicking here and write our first Python program. Simply type print all in lowercase, open and close parentheses, and inside the parentheses add quotations. We can either use single quotes or double quotes. Now in between the quotes type your name. So I am Dion Cardoza. So this is your first Python program. With this code, you can print your name on the screen. Now go on the top and click on the run button. Now if you don't see this button here, click on this icon and in the search bar type Python. Click on this. Here you will get an install option. Just click on install. Back to our program, let's click on this run button. Now down below you should see this little terminal window. This is the little window where you can see the results or output of your program. So as you can see, my name is printed over here. So as you write code, this terminal window might come in your way and you can always resize it or minimize it by clicking on this icon. So this was our first Python program. Now if you didn't see the result I showed you in this video, use the comment box below and tell me what problem you encountered. I will do my best to help you move forward. In this tutorial, you will learn about variables. Variables are one of the most fundamental concepts of programming. Variables store temporary data in computer's memory. Let's type x equals 12. When the Python interpreter interprets this code, it will first allocate some memory and then it will store the number 12 in the memory. And finally, it will attach these x to the memory location. Imagine we have a basket and the number of x in the basket is 12. So the x are the label we put on the basket. So these x are the label we can use anywhere in the program to access the value we have in the basket. This is a very simplified explanation. Now, we must print the price on the terminal. Print. Now this time we are not going to add quotations because if we put quotations here, you will see the text X on the terminal. So remove the quotations and type X. Now let's run this program one more time. There you go. So we have 12 on the terminal. So this is how we define a variable. We start with an identifier, which is the name of the variable, then an equal sign, and finally a value. So let's take this program to the next level. Now in the next line, let's write x equals 24. So now when we run the program, we should see 24 because as I told you before, the Python interpreter interprets the code line by line from the top. First, we set the number of x to 12 and then we reset it to 24. Let's run the program and there you go, we see 24 here. So the number we have here is the whole number, meaning they have no decimal point. In programming, we call these numbers as integers. We can also use numbers with decimal points. Like here on line 2, we will define a variable kilometer and we will set it to 1.5. In programming, we call this number as a floating point number or a float. So we have integers and floats. We can also define a variable and set it to string. Name equals Dion. We also have another type of value which is called boolean, which can be true or false. Here is an example. We are going to define a variable is underscore good. So we use an underscore to separate multiple words in our variable's name. We set this to true or false. These are the boolean values. Now note that Python is a case sensitive language, which means it is sensitive to lowercase and uppercase. So while defining a variable, you should always use lowercase letters. Here, false and true are special keywords, so you should spell these with an uppercase letter. If you use a lowercase here, Python doesn't understand it. You can see we have a red line here which indicates an error. So make sure you spell this with a capital F, or if you want to set it to true, make sure you spell it with a capital T. So in this program, we are storing simple values in our computer's memory, like numbers which are integers and floats, or strings and boolean values. We can also store complex values like lists, which I will show you in the future. So before going any further, I have a little exercise for you. John runs a 2.5 kilometers marathon and finishes in the first place. I want you to define 3 variables, for the name, for the distance he covered, and another variable to tell if he wins the marathon or not. So pause the video and spend 1 minute on this exercise. When you're done, come back, continue and see my solution. First, let's start by defining a variable called name to store the name of the person. In this case, it is John. So name equals John. In the next line, we'll define a variable to store the distance covered by him. So distance equals 2.5. And lastly, let's define a variable is underscore winner to tell if he's the winner or not. In this case, he is the winner. So let's set this to true. So this is the solution to this exercise. So we have learned how to use print to print something on the terminal window. In this tutorial, I will show you how to receive input from the user. So we will write a program that will ask the user his or her name and prints a welcome message for the user. Here, instead of print, we are going to use input. Now, both this print and input are functions that are built into Python. Think of a keyboard of your computer. It has a bunch of keys. These are the functions built in to your computer. We can type text, numbers, and so on. Similarly, in Python, we have a bunch of functions for printing messages, receiving inputs, and so on. So let's use the input function. Whenever we use this parenthesis, we are calling the function. It's like pressing a key on your keyboard. So we are going to call an input function, and inside the parenthesis, we want to add a string to print something on the terminal. What is your name? Followed by a space. You will see why in a second. So this input function will print the statement on the terminal and wait for the user to enter a value. So whatever the user enters, this input function will return. So now we can store this return value in the memory using a variable. So we get the result and put it into a variable called name. So in the next line, print hello. So after the quotation, we want to print what we have in the variable. So we add a plus sign and name. So here we have hello, which is a string. We are concatenating or combining it with another string that we have in the name variable. So let's run this program and see what happens. So here's the question. What is your name? Type your name. My name is Dion. Remember, we added a space after the question mark because here on the terminal window, the question mark is separated by a space. Otherwise, the cursor will be so close to the question mark. Now, press enter and we get this message. Hello, Dion. Now, here's a little exercise for you. Extend this program and ask 3 questions. Ask the person their name, their age, and their hobby. Then print a message like Dion is 16 years old and he likes to code. So pause the video, do this exercise, and then come back and continue watching. First, let's start by asking the name of the user. So let's define a variable called name. Name equals input. And then type what is your name, followed by a space. Next, we need to ask for their age. So let's define another variable called age. So age equals input. And then type what is your age. Now we should ask the user their hobby. So let's define another variable called hobby. So hobby equals input. And type what is your hobby. Lastly, we need to print this on the terminal. So print name and then add a plus sign. Now add quotations. And in between the quotations add a space and type is. And then again add a space. Then add a plus sign and type age. Now again add a plus sign and add quotations. And in between the quotations add a space. Now type years old and he likes to, followed by a space. Again a plus sign and type hobby. So let's run this program. What is your name? So type your name. Press enter. What is your age? So type your age here and press enter again. What is your hobby? And now enter your hobby and press enter. So we get Dion is 16 years old and he likes to code. In this tutorial, we will write a program that will ask the user the total price of the product and then automatically add the price of a carry bag to it and then print the total price on the terminal. So let's start with our input function. Input, price of the product. Now, let's get the return value and store it in a variable called price. Next, we need to calculate the total price of the product. So let's define a variable total underscore price. As I said you before, we use an underscore to separate multiple words. Now here we do some basic math. Let's assume that the price of a carry bag is $1. So total price equals to 1 plus price. Finally, let's print the total price on the terminal. Let's run this program and see what happens. So let's assume that the price of the product is $10. Click enter. Oops, we got an error. What is going on here? So whenever you see this message, it means something is wrong in your program. With the information here, we can find exactly where the error occurred. So in this case, you can see the file that generated the error is app.py. So in this file on line 2, this is where we got an error. And right below that, you can see the piece of code that generated the error. So that is where we are calculating the total price. So right below that, you can see the type of error. So we have a type error. And here we have the message. Unsupported operand type for int and stir. So int is the short form for integer and stir is the short form for string. So here we are adding a string with an integer. Python doesn't know what to do with it. Let me explain. After the first line is executed, we have the price variable set to a string. So whatever we type in the terminal is always treated as a string, even if we type a number. In other words, when we run this program, this price will be set to a string. Price equals 10. This string is different from the actual number 10. Back to line 2 at runtime, which means when we run our program, this program at the right side of the assignment operator is going to look like this. 1 plus string 10. Python doesn't know how to interpret or evaluate this expression. To fix this problem, we need to convert this 10 into an integer, and then we'll be able to add it with 1. And that is very easy. So far you have learned about two built-in functions. One is print and the other is input. We have other functions for converting values into different types. So we have int for converting a string to an integer. We also have float for converting a string into a float. And we also have bool for converting a string into a boolean value. So to fix this, we need to go to the second line and pass this price variable to the int function like this, int of price. So we pass this variable into an integer function, which will convert it into an integer, and then the Python interpreter will be able to evaluate this expression. Now let's run this program one more time. So the price is 10. Enter. So the total price is 11. In Python, we have a useful function for getting a type of variable. For example, let's print the type of price. So right after line 1, let's print. Here I am going to call another built-in function called type. And now let's pass price. Now similarly, after line 3, we'll print type of total price. Let's run our program. So type 10 and press enter. Here is the result. So the type of price you can see is a class of stir or a string. And the type of total price is an integer. So whenever you use an input function, you will get a string. So you must convert it into an integer or a float value. So here's an exercise for you. First, ask the user his or her weight in pounds and convert it into kilograms. Then ask the user his or her height in inches and convert it into meters. Print the result on the terminal. First, let us ask the user their weight in pounds. So let's define a variable called weight underscore pounds. So weight underscore pounds equals input. And now type weight in LBS. In the next line, let's define a variable called weight underscore kilograms. We will use this variable to store the converted value. So weight underscore kilograms equals int weight underscore pounds. Then let's multiply this by 0.45. Now let's ask the user their height and store it in a variable called height underscore inches. So height underscore inches equals input and type height in inches. In the next line, we'll define a variable called height underscore meters to store the converted height. So height underscore meters equals int of height underscore inches. And now let's multiply this by 0.0254. Now let's print both the height and weight on the terminal. So print and inside the quotations type weight, followed by a colon and space. Then add plus and type store of weight underscore kilograms. Again, add a plus and add quotations. In between the quotations, add a space and type height, followed by a colon and space. Now again, add a plus sign and type stir of height underscore meters. So let's run this program and see what we get. So let's say the weight in pounds is 100. So type 100 and press enter. Now let's type the height as 70 inches and press enter. So there you go. Weight is 45 kilograms and height is 1.778 meters. In this tutorial, you are going to learn more about Python strings. Define a variable called creator and set it to Python was created by Guido van Rossum. I've told you that you can use both single or double quotes, but there are times when you need to use a specific form, otherwise you're going to run into issues. Here is an example. Imagine you want to change the string into Python's creator is Guido van Rossum. So we want to add an apostrophe, like Python's creator is Guido van Rossum. You can see we have something wrong in our code, because our string starts here and terminates here. All the characters we have after the second apostrophe, Python doesn't know what they are. So to fix this problem, we need to use double quotes so that we can have a single quote in the middle of the string. So let's change this to double quote. So now we can see the error is gone. Now if you print creator, you can see Python's creator is Guido van Rossum. Now let's change the string again to Python was created by Guido van Rossum. Now say we want Guido van Rossum inside double quotes. Now if we put double quotes here, the Python interpreter is confused because it thinks that the second quotation is the end of our string. So to solve this, we need to change the double quotes into single quotes, and then we can add double quotes in between our string. Now let's run this program. There you go. Python was created by Guido van Rossum. So these are the cases for using single or double quotes. Now in all the examples I have shown you so far, we only deal with short strings. But what if we want to define a string with multiple lines? In this case, we need to use triple quotes. Let me delete this. Now we add 3 quotes. 1, 2, 3. There you go. With this, you can define multiple strings. For example, hi everyone. Visit our website for more awesome tutorials and resources. Thank you, Leon Cardoza. Now let's run this program. And here's the result. So you get all the multi-line strings. Now let's change this back to Python was created by Guido van Rossum. Now here we can use square brackets to get the character at the given index in the string. Let me show you. So to get the first character, we use square brackets and type 0 like this. Creator, square brackets, and inside the square brackets type 0. So the index of the first character in the string is 0. So let's run this program and we get P. We can also use the negative index. With the negative index, we get the characters starting from the end. Let's enter -1. Now let's run our program and we get M. We can pass -2. It will return the second character from the end. Let's run it one more time and we get U. We can also extract some characters instead of a single character. For example, if we type 0:5, Python interpreter will return all the characters from the first index till the second index but will not return the character at the second index. When we run this program, the Python interpreter will return from index 0 till index 5 but excludes the character at index 5. So when we run this Python program, we are going to see Python. Let's run the program. And there you go, Python. Now we also have default values for the start and the end index. If you don't supply the end index, the Python interpreter will return all the characters from the start till the end. Let's print this and there you go. Python was created by Guido van Rossum. Now, if we change the start index to 1, it will exclude the first character. So when we run this program, we see YTHON. P is removed. Now, we also have a default for the start index. Now, if you don't supply the start index and enter the end index as 6, Python interpreter will assume the start index as 0. So let's run this program. There you go, we get Python. Now, what if we leave both the start index and the end index empty? Here, 0 will be assumed as the start index and the length of the string will be assumed as the end index. So with this syntax, you can copy or clone your string. In other words, if I define another variable, let's call it creator clone, and let's set it to creator square brackets, and inside the square brackets add a colon. Now this variable will return all the characters in the creator variable. So the second variable will be a copy of our first variable. So let's print creator underscore clone. There you go, we get Python was created by Guido van Rossum. Now here's a little exercise for you. Define a variable, name and set it to James. In the next line, add print and inside the parenthesis type name. Add square brackets and inside the square brackets supply the start index as 2 and the end index as -1. So what do you think we'll get on the terminal? I want you to tell the answer without running this program. Let's run this program. We get me. I hope you guessed it right. So you have learned that in Python we have two types of numbers. Integers, which are whole numbers like 5, which don't have a decimal point, and floating point numbers, which are numbers with a decimal point. In this tutorial, we are going to look at the arithmetic operations supported in Python. These are the same arithmetic operations we have in math. We can add numbers, subtract numbers, and so on. So let's look at a few examples. So we can print 5 plus 2. So this is the addition operator. We can also have subtraction, we can have multiplication, and we can have two kinds of division. Here is the one with forward slash. Let's run this program and see what we get. We get a floating point number. But we also have another division operator for getting an integer. So if we add another slash here and run this program, we get an integer. We have another operator called modulus, which is a percentage sign. This returns the remainder of the division. So when we run this program, we should get 1. There you go. And one last operator we have is the exponent, which is power. So this is indicated with 2 asterisks, and this will return 5 to the power of 2. So let's run this program. We get 25. So these are the arithmetic operators in Python programming language. So for all the operators you have learned, we have an augmented assignment operator. That is very useful. Let me show you. So let's say we have a variable y. Let's set this to 5. Now we want to increment this by 2. So we have to write the code like this. Y equals y plus 2. So the Python interpreter will add 5 to 2 and the result is 7. And then it gets stored in y again. So when we print y, we should see 7. There you go. So this is how we can increment a number. So augmented assignment operator is the way to write the same code in a shorter form. So this is how it looks. Y plus equals 2. So what we have on line 3 is the same as what we have on line 2. So this is what we call an augmented assignment operator. We have augmented the assignment operator. In this case, we are incrementing the value using an augmented assignment operator. But we can also subtract or multiply a number by a given value. So we can type minus equals 2. Here we are subtracting 2 from y. When we run this program, we should see 3. There you go. So let me ask you a question. Define y and set it to 5 plus 2 multiplied by 4. What do you think is the result of this expression? This is a very basic math question that unfortunately a lot of people fail to answer. The answer is 13. Because in math we have this concept called operator precedence, which means the order of operations. So the multiplication operator has the larger precedence, so it is applied first, which means 2 into 4 is executed first, and then the result is added to 5. Let's verify this. Print y and run the program. Y is 13. So this is what we call operator precedence. So this is just a basic math concept. So here's the order. First, we have the exponentiation, which is the part like 5 to the power of 2. Then we have multiplication or division. And finally, we have addition or subtraction. Let me show you another example. Here, I will add an exponential operator. So 4 to the power of 2. What do you think is the result of this operation? The answer is 37. Because the exponentiation operator takes precedence. So first, it is executed. Then it is multiplied by 2. And finally added to 5. So let's run this program and verify this. There you go. Y is 37. We can also use parentheses to change the order of operation. If we have parentheses, it always takes priority. In this case, we can add parentheses around 2 and 4. So this piece of code will be executed first. The result is 8. Then 8 will be squared and the result will be 64. Finally, it will be added to 5. So the final answer is 69. Now here's a little exercise for you. I will set a variable y equals 6 plus 10 multiplied by 5 minus 2 to the power of 4. Pause the video and think about it for a few seconds. So you have learned that parenthesis always overrides the order. So this piece of code will be executed first. So 6 plus 10 is 16 and then 2 raised to 4 is also 16. So we have 16 multiplied by 5 minus 16. So you have learned that multiplication has precedence or subtraction. So the final answer is 16 multiplied by 5, which is 80, and then 80 minus 16, which is 64. Let's verify this. Run the program. There you go. I hope you guessed it right. In this tutorial, I am going to talk to you guys about if statements in Python. If statements are very important in programming and allow us to build a program that allows us to make decisions based on some conditions. If the condition is true, we are going to do certain things, else we'll be doing other things. Here is an example. Over here, I have got a text file with a bunch of rules for our program. Imagine you are driving a car and you see traffic lights in front of you. If the light on the traffic signal turns red, you have to tell the user to stop. Otherwise, if it's yellow, we have another condition. Here, we have to tell the user it's a yellow light, so get ready. Otherwise, if it's neither red nor yellow, meaning it's green, you have to tell the user to go. So let me show you how to write a program that simulates these rules. We start by writing a boolean variable is_red and we set it to true. Now we add an if statement and here we should write a condition. In this case we are going to use our boolean variable. So is_red. Now this evaluates to true. Then we are going to do certain things. In this case we want to tell the user it's a red signal. So back to our program. So after the condition, we will add a colon. Now note that when we press enter, VS Code automatically indents our cursor. Now any code we write here will be executed if this condition is true. Otherwise, it will be ignored. Here is an example. Let's write a print statement. Print, it's a red signal. Now press enter. Now we can see that the cursor is still indented. This means that we can write more code that will be executed if the condition is true. In this case, let's say we don't want to write any extra code. So to terminate this block, we need to press Shift and Tab. Now the cursor is at the beginning of the line. So let's write a print statement with a message like enjoy your day. Now when we run this program, we are going to see this message followed by this message because the condition is true. So take a look. So there you go. It's a red signal. Enjoy your day. Now if we go here and change the value to false and run our program again, our first message disappears. We only see the second message. Enjoy your day. So this is how if statements work. Now back here we can add another print statement. Let's say stop the car. Now because this print statement is also indented, this will be executed if the statement is true. So I am going to revert this false to true. And let's run the program one more time. So there you go. It's a red signal. Stop the car and enjoy your day. Now let's add a second rule here. If it's a red signal, we are going to execute these two lines. Otherwise, if it's a yellow signal, we want to print a different message. So here we type else followed by a colon. Now when we press enter, our cursor is indented. So the code we write here will be executed if this condition is not true. So here we can print, it's a yellow signal. In the next line we can print, get ready. So let's run our program. So we get the messages of red signal followed by enjoy your day. We don't get any messages about the yellow signal. Now if we go here on the top and change this boolean value to false and then run our program, we will see a different set of messages. It's a yellow signal. Get ready. Enjoy your day. Now there's a problem in our program. If it's not red, it doesn't mean it's necessarily yellow. It's a green signal. So back in our conditions, we have this here. If it's a yellow signal, print get ready. Otherwise, print it's a green signal, go. So to implement this rule, we have to go back to app.py and define another variable. So is underscore yellow and we will set this to true. So here we need to add a second condition. So after our if statement, we can add an elif to define our second condition. So here is how it works. Elif, which is short for else if. So here we add another condition is yellow. So if it's yellow, we want to execute these two lines. So let's cut these from here and move them under our second condition. And finally, if none of these conditions are true, we want to print it's a green signal, go. So right now, is red is false and is yellow is true. So when we run the program, the Python interpreter is going to execute the first if statement. In this case, because our condition is false, these two lines will be ignored. Then the Python interpreter will look at the second condition. In this case, it is true. So it will print these statements. So in this case, because one of the statements was true, we are not going to see this message. And finally, we are going to this message. So let's run our program. It's a yellow signal. Get ready. Enjoy your day. Now if we change is yellow to false, it's neither red nor yellow. So it's going to be green. So let's run the program. And here you go. It's a green signal. Go. Enjoy your day. So here's an exercise for you. You have to write a program to check if you should carry an umbrella or not. So the first condition is that if it's cloudy outside, you should carry an umbrella. Else, you shouldn't carry an umbrella. So spend a few minutes on this exercise. You will see my solution next. So let's start by defining a variable. Let's call it is underscore cloudy and set it to true. Now let's write an if statement. So if is underscore cloudy, print carry an umbrella, else do not carry an umbrella. Now let's run our program. There you go. In this tutorial, I am going to talk to you guys about logical operators in Python. We use these operators in situations where we have multiple conditions. Here is an example. Let's say we are building an application to check whether someone is eligible to win the code challenge. If any applicant is a patron or is a subscriber, they are eligible to win the challenge. So for example, we have two conditions. They must be a patron and must be a subscriber. If both these conditions are true, then the applicant is eligible to win the challenge. So this is where we use logical and operator. We use to combine two operations. So back to our program, let's define two variables. Is a patron and let's set it to true. And another is a subscriber and let's set this also to true. Now our if statement. If is a patron is true and is a subscriber is also true, we are going to print eligible for winning the challenge. So here is where we are using the AND operator. If both these conditions are true, then this message will be printed. If one of them is false, we are not going to see this message. Let's run this program. So we see eligible for winning the challenge. But if we change either of these conditions to false and run the program again, look, the message disappeared. We also have the logical OR operator. We use it in situations where if at least one of the conditions is true. So let's change the rule for this statement such that if an applicant is a patron or is a subscriber, then they are eligible for the challenge. Now back to our program, we can implement this rule by using the logical OR operator. So we simply replace AND with OR. So when we run this program, we will see this message because at least one of our conditions is true. Let's take a look. So the applicant is eligible for winning the challenge because he or she is a subscriber. If we change this to false and change the other one to true and run the program, we still see the same result. But if both the conditions are false, then we are not going to see this message anymore. We also have another logical operator called NOT that inverses boolean value we give it. If we give it a true boolean value, then it converts it to false. So let's make a new rule. If the applicant is a patron and has not won any previous challenge, then they are eligible for winning this challenge. Let me show you how to implement this. So let me go to our program. So let's set the first variable to true. We also define another variable called has not won. We set this to false. So in this example, has not won is set to false. So when we use the not operator, this will get changed to true. So we will have two true conditions. So our applicant is eligible for winning the challenge. So let's run this program and we will see eligible for winning the challenge. However, if an applicant has participated in the previous challenge, let's set this to true and let me run this program. So you can see our applicant is not eligible because when we apply not operator on this variable, we will get false. So we will end up with two conditions, one of which is true and the other one is false. So the result is false and that's why this result is not printed. So this is all about logical operators in Python. In this tutorial, I am going to talk to you guys about comparison operators in Python. We use comparison operators in situations where we want to compare a variable with a value. For example, imagine you go to a fruit shop. Now, if the price of an apple is less than $2, you will buy an apple. Else, you will buy an orange. So to build these rules in our program, we need to use comparison operators. Back to app.py, here let's define a variable called price and set it to 5. In the next line, if price is less than 2, we want to print buy an apple, else just print buy an orange. When we run this program, we are going to see the second message because 5 is greater than 2. Let's verify that. So run this program. Buy an orange. Now if we change the price to 1 and run it again, we will see buy an apple. So this is where we use comparison operators. So this is a greater than operator. We also have greater than or equal to. We also have less than. And we also have less than or equal to. Here is the equality operator. If the price is equal to 2, we can buy an apple. Note that it is different from the assignment operator which has only one equal sign. If you use one equal sign, we can see that we get the red underline. And finally, we have not equal to operator, which is an exclamation mark followed by an equal sign. So here's an exercise for you. Accept any year from the user and print whether it is a leap year or not. So a leap year is a year with one extra day and it comes after every 4 years. So spend a few minutes on this exercise. You will see my solution next. So here I have a text file with the condition. If a year is divisible by 400, it's a leap year. The second condition is if a year is divisible by 100, it is not a leap year. So all the centurial years except for those divisible by 400 are not leap years. And the third condition is if a year is divisible by 4, it is a leap year. So we can define a variable here called y for accepting the input from the user. Y equals input. And here let's type enter a year. But we need an integer as input. So we will convert the result into an integer. So int of input, enter a year. In the next line, let's add an if statement. If y mod 4 equals 0 and y mod 100 is not equal to 0, we want to print y is a leap year. So press enter and print y comma and inside the quotations is a leap year. In the next line, we want to check for not a leap year. So we add an elif statement. Elif y modulus of 100 equals 0, print y and inside the quotations type is not a leap year. In the next condition, we want to check if y is a leap year. So add an elif statement. Elif y modulus of 400 equals 0 and we want to print y is a leap year. In the next line, let's add an else statement and simply print y inside the quotations is not a leap year. So let's run the program. Enter a year. So let's enter 2020. So we get 2020 is a leap year. Now let's run the program again. Enter a year. So let's enter 1600. So we get it's not a leap year. So let's run this program one last time. Enter a year. So let's enter 2021. So we get is not a leap year. In this tutorial, I will talk to you guys about for loops in Python. We use loops to iterate over items of a collection such as a string because a string is a sequence of characters. So we can use for loop to iterate over each character of a string and do something with it. Here is an example. We type out for, then we define a variable. This is what we call a for loop. For each iteration, this variable will hold one item. So let's call it item, then in. And here we type out our string, Python, and then colon. So with this for loop, we can iterate over this string. And this variable will hold each iteration. In the first iteration, it will be set to p. In the second iteration, it will be set to y. In the third iteration, it will be set to t, and so on. So here we are inside for block. So anything we type here will be executed. So for now, we can simply print item. Let's run this program and see what happens. So you can see each character in our string is printed on a new line. Let's look at another example. In Python, we can define a list using square brackets. So let me remove Python from here and define a list using square brackets. A list is simply a list of items, like a list of numbers, products, or whatever. So here we can define a list of names. So add square brackets and type three names: James, John, Robert. Let's go ahead and run our program. So we can see at each iteration we have one name printed on a new line. We can also look over a list of numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's run it again. We see each number on a new line. But what if we want to iterate over a large list of numbers? So that is where we use the range function. In Python, we have a built-in function called range for creating a range of numbers. So we give it a number. Let's say 5. Let's run this program. We can see that here on terminal, we have numbers from 0 till 4. So 5 is not included. So basically, when we call the range function, this range function creates an object that we can iterate over. In each iteration, this object will spit out a new number. We can also work with a range of numbers here. So let's say we want to start at 5 and go all the way till 15. So let's run our program. So we have the numbers 5, 6, 7 to 14. So the range function can optionally take a step. So we can pass 3 as the step to this function. Let's run this program. So we can see that our first number is 5. Then we go 3 steps forward. So the next number is 8. Then again 3 steps forward and 11 and so on. So here is an exercise for you. Remember you went to a fruit store to buy some fruit? Imagine the cost of an apple is $10 and the cost of an orange was $20. You also bought some bananas that cost $30. So I want you to write a program to calculate the total price of the fruits. This is a pretty simple exercise. So spend a few minutes on this exercise and you will see my solution next. So let's start by defining a variable called prices and let's set this to a list 10, 20, 30. In the next line, type for price in prices. So here, this price variable is going to hold different values on each iteration. So we need to define another variable to calculate the total. So we define that outside of our for loop. Total equals 0. Now in each iteration, we get the current price and add it to the total. So prices equals 10, 20, 30 and then for price in prices. In the next line, type total plus equals price. Print, here we use a formatted string F and inside the quotations total followed by a colon. Now inside the curly braces type total. So let's run this program. So the total price is 60. In this tutorial, I will show you how to use while loops in Python. We use a while loop to execute a block of code multiple times. So we write a while statement and a condition followed by a colon. So as long as this condition is true, the code we write in this block will be repeatedly executed. Now let's write our previous exercise using the while loop. So here we can define a variable a equals 1. So we set our condition to a less than or equal to 10. So as long as a is less than or equal to 10, we can print a on the terminal. And then we need to increment a by 1. So a equals a plus 1. We do this because if we don't increment a by 1, then the value of a will always remain 1 and a will always be less than 10. So this loop will be executed infinite times. So we increment a by 1. So at some point a will be 11 and we jump out of this loop. So to demonstrate how this works, so after the loop I am going to print loop is completed. Note that these two lines are indented, so they are the part of this while block. Now let's go ahead and run this program and see what happens. So we get the numbers 1 to 10 followed by loop is completed. So here is how this program gets executed. First we set a to 1. Now Python interpreter executes line 2. This line is true because a is less than 10. So a is printed on the terminal and incremented by 1. So the control moves back to the beginning of the while loop. So it doesn't execute the next statement. So we came back here. Now we are in the second iteration. In the second iteration, a is true as a is less than 10. So a will be printed on the terminal and once again it will be incremented by 1. At some point a is going to be 11 and this condition is going to be false. So our loop will be terminated and then this loop is completed will be printed on the terminal. Now let's make this program a little bit more interesting. So here we add a hash and then we multiply this by a. So print hash into a. Now let's run the program and see what we get. So we get a little triangle shape because in the first iteration a is 1. So in the first time a produces 1 hash. Then a is incremented to 2. So 2 times hash is 2 hash and so on. In this tutorial, we are going to take a closer look at lists. So I am going to define a list of companies. Companies equals Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon and Facebook. So if we print this list here, what it looks like is exactly what we defined. So we have our square brackets. In between these square brackets, we have our items. So we have 5 strings in this list. So we can access an individual element using an index, like how we can access an individual character in a string using an index. So here we type out the square brackets and specify the index. So the index of the first item in the list is 0. So let's run this program and we get Apple. So if you want to print out the fourth element in the list, its index is 3. So companies of 3 returns Amazon. So we can also pass a negative index here. So -1 refers to the last item in the list, which is Facebook. So let's run this program. So there you see Facebook. So if you pass -3, it returns the third item from the end of the list, which is Google. So let's run our program and we get Google. We can also use a colon to select a range of items. So if we pass 1 colon, this will get all the strings starting from the index position 1, which is Microsoft, to Facebook. So let's run this program. So you get this list of 4 items: Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook. So we can also pass the second index. Let's say 3. So this prints all the strings till the index of 3 but doesn't print the value at the index of 3. So when we run the program, we only see Microsoft and Google. And also we have the default values. If we leave out the end index, it will print all the strings from Microsoft to Facebook. So if we leave the start index, it will assume 0 as the start index. So it will return all the values in the list. So same as strings, these square brackets here don't modify our list. They simply return a new list. For example, if we pass 1 here, it returns a list of 4 items. So if we go back here and print companies, we can see that it is not affected. So we can also modify any of the items in the list. For example, let's say we want the last item to be Tesla and not Facebook. That is very easy. So we can access it using the index companies of 4 equals Tesla. And now let's print our list. So we can see the last item in our list is updated. So here is an exercise for you. I want you to write a program to find the longest string in the list. This is a fantastic exercise. So go ahead and spend some time. Then come back and continue watching. So we start by defining a variable called companies and set it to Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon and Tesla. Now we define another variable called max length. So max underscore length. Initially we set it to length of the companies of 0, which means we are setting it to the length of Apple. In the next line, for company in companies, Here we are using a for loop. This for loop will iterate over this list of companies. In the next line, let's type if len of company is greater than the max length, then max length equals len of company. And then we store the result in a variable called result. So result equals company. And finally, we'll print the result. So let's run our program. So we get Microsoft. In this tutorial, I will talk to you guys about list methods or list functions. These are the operations we can perform on a list. So let's pass a list of fruits: mango, orange, apple, strawberry, and pineapple. Now there are several things we can do with this list. We can add items, we can delete items, and we can check for the existence of items. So we can type fruits and we can call the append method to add items to this list. So let's say cherry. So now let's print fruits. So when we run this program, you can see that cherry is added at the end of the list. So what if we want to add something somewhere in middle or beginning of our list? So for that we can use a different method called insert. So insert. So this method takes two values. Let me show you. The first value we must pass is an index. So it is the index where we should insert this item. So let's say we want to add the item at the beginning of our list. So we pass 0. And then the second value is actual value we want to add to this list. Let's say we want to add kiwi. So when we print this list, you can see kiwi is added to the beginning of the list. We can also remove an item. So we call remove and pass the item we want to remove. Let's say we want to remove pineapple. So we print our list. So we can see pineapple is gone. So if you want to remove all the items from the list, you can call the clear method. So fruits.clear. This method doesn't take any value. So we simply call it and it empties our list. We also have another method called pop. And with this, we can remove the last item on the list. So let's run our program. You can see pineapple is removed from the list. Now, if you want to check the existence for an item in the list, you can call the index method. So fruits.index of mango. So this returns the index position of the first occurrence of the item. So let's print this on the terminal. So the index of mango is 0. What if we pass a fruit that doesn't exist in this list? Let's say watermelon. We get an error. We get a value error. Watermelon is not on the list. There is also another way to check for the existence of an item. We can use the in operator. So let me show you. So we type out watermelon in fruits. Earlier we used this in operator with a string. We could check the presence of a character or a sequence of characters in the string. So let's print this. We get a boolean value, false. Unlike the index method, this doesn't generate an error. So it is safer to use. We also have another method for counting the occurrence of an item. Let's say we have another apple over here. Now we can call fruits.count of apple. And this should return 2 because we have 2 apples in this list. There you go. Now if you want to sort the list, you can call the sort method. So the sort method doesn't take any value. So look at the return value. That is none. None is an object in Python that represents the absence of an value. So the sort method doesn't return any value. It simply sorts the list. So instead of printing the sort value, we first sort our list. Fruits.sort and then print our list. Print fruits. All the items are sorted in ascending order. We can sort the items in descending order. So after we sort our list, we can call the reverse method. Fruit.reverse. Now let's go ahead and run our program. Take a look. Our items are sorted in the descending order. And one last method I want to show you here is the copy method. So let's define another variable. Fruits2 equals fruits.copy. So if we add or delete item in our fruits list, it is not going to affect the fruits to list. Let me show you. So fruits.append kiwi. Now let's print this list. We don't have kiwi here because these are two independent lists. So all these are the functions we can perform on a list. We can add new items, we can remove items, we can check for the existence of items, we can sort our list and copy them. Now here's an exercise for you. I want you to write a program to remove the duplicates from a list. So spend a few minutes on this exercise. You will see my solution next. So let's start by defining a list of fruits. Fruits equals mango, orange, apple, strawberry, pineapple, mango, strawberry. Now let's define another list. Fruits2 equals an empty list. In the next line, let's write a for loop for fruit in fruits. And here we write an if statement. If fruit not in fruits2, fruits2.append fruit. So what we are doing here is we are checking if the fruit is present in the fruits2 list. If it is not, we are going to append that fruit to the fruits2 list. If a fruit is already found in the fruits2 list, we are not going to append it. So now let's print this list. Print fruits2. Now let's run this program. So we get mango, orange, apple, strawberry and pineapple. All the duplicates are removed. In this tutorial, I am going to talk to you guys about another important structure in Python called a tuple. Tuples are similar to lists, so we can use them to store a list of values. But unlike lists, we can't modify them. We can't add new items, we cannot remove existing items. We say tuples are immutable. We cannot mutate or change them. Let me show you. So I am going to start by defining a variable called fruits. Fruits equals mango, orange, apple, strawberry and pineapple. We use square brackets to define lists and we use parentheses to define tuples. So fruits dot. We have only two methods for tuples. One is count, to count the number of items, and index to find the index of the first occurrence of an item. Similar to list, we can access items using square brackets. So fruits of 0. So let's print this on the terminal. There you go, the first item is mango. But if we try to change the first item, we get an error. So fruits of 0 equals cherry and run our program. We get a type error because this tuple object does not support item assignment. So we cannot mutate or change tuples. They are immutable. Hey, I just wanted to make a quick announcement. In case you haven't seen my website yet, head over to dioncardoza.com. It is my coding school where you can find plenty of courses. I will soon be publishing a Python course that goes way beyond this course on YouTube. So that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you learned a lot. Please support my hard work by liking this video and sharing it with others. And also be sure to subscribe to my channel for more tutorials like this. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you soon.